Hey, Dr. David Crozy here, and I recently started the Inspired Book and Brew Crew. We get together monthly and we talk about a book that was inspiring or life changing. We meet at a local brewery or restaurant, and then we have time to share the goals that we're working on and give each other advice about how we can reach those. And we had our first meeting over at Court Avenue Brewing Company, and Scott Carlson, the owner of Court Avenue, was kind enough to come in and share with us his story about how he got that restaurant and some other restaurants up and running. I encourage you to listen to the interview. My favorite part is where he talks about what it took to get the Iowa craft beer tent started and up and running successfully. So listen to this interview and join the Facebook group. Come to a meeting. I can't wait to meet you or see you interacting on the Facebook group. So here's that interview.
So Scott Carlson, I'm 48 years old, opened this brewery up when I was 26. So we're going on 23 years this October. We were the second brew pub in the state, so it was a lot of fun to kind of break down some of the Iowa laws and kind of get beer separated from liquor because this was still a control state. When I read your notes about reading a book, I'm not much of a reader, but I'm a big researcher, right? So like when I came and did the brewery the first time, I had to do a lot of research with the state, how to open a brewery, how to rehab an old building, how to come in after the floods of '93. This was vacant at that point. Talk about rehabbing. I've been there, done that a couple of times. So it was kind of, I do a lot of reading and research more than I do reading for fun, which probably should be a goal of mine one of these days, is to read for fun. I am reading the play Alexander Hamilton's based on the book Hamilton. My wife gave me the other book on Ulysses S. Grant, so I've been reading that. I got it last Christmas, though, not this past Christmas, 2 Christmases ago. Not done yet, so I can tell you how often I read for pleasure. But I grew up all over the country, lived in the UK twice, lived in North Africa once, both coasts, Midwest. Graduated high school just outside of Philadelphia, and then I went to school on the East Coast for hotel, restaurant, institutional management, and decided I didn't want to do the commissary, didn't want to do the institutional, didn't really want to do the hotel, but wanted to do the restaurant side. And my brother was going to Drake University and says they have a great business program. If you go to Penn State, I think you will never graduate, which could be true. I like to have fun. I like beer, still do. So I came to Drake for my degree in business and then ended up staying. Just because at the time when I got here in 1990, the floods did occur, and it kind of wiped out the small restaurant scene that was here already, and no one was really coming back. A lot of those restaurants weren't doing very well, so when the floods came, they decided just not to come back. I don't know who's here, but the Julio's used to be downtown, a great little place. The French Quarter used to be downtown, Sheffield's was downtown, and they just didn't come back. They didn't have the wherewithal to come back after the floods. So I kind of saw this opportunity to maybe bring something back down to Court Avenue. In 1993-ish. Took a little while to get open in 1996, but obviously it was something we got done. So as I hear about goals, it's interesting. I've got 4 businesses, so I have maybe even 5. I have Court Avenue Brewing Company, Americana restaurant on the Western Gateway, Gilroy's out on 8th Street, the old Jimmy's American Cafe, and then I have the Iowa Craft Beer Tent, which you probably have seen at the Iowa State Fair. Or you might see at the Arts Festival or on Ragbri. You might see us. We have a couple of stops on Ragbri. And what I've found a little bit is, it's kind of setting myself up for opportunity more than goal, like having a specific goal, is when I've found as like at least on an entrepreneurship spirit. Nothing I'm doing is that remarkably entrepreneurial, right? Restaurants been around a long time. Beer's been around longer, I think. So it's not like that goes. But just setting yourself up for that kind of moment of opportunity. I was trying to get beer at the Iowa State Fair since pretty much 1996, and I was told no every year. They're not going to have any more beer licenses, and they're not going to have any more alcohol at the fair. But if you want to come back next year, you can and reapply. So I kind of went back every year and reapplied, and I was told no, except for the year we opened up Americana. I did not go apply, and then the foundation called me and said, "Hey, we hear you want to put craft beer at the Iowa State Fair. We think that's a great idea. We have a space for you." And this is like in June, and I said, "Okay, when?" This year, August. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm not sure I have the wherewithal opening a restaurant at that time. I think my wife was going to take me out if she had a chance, as far as being busy. But I learned if you say yes, a lot of times, as long as you have the kind of that confidence to move forward, I said yes. I didn't really know where the place was going to be, I was thinking it was going to be like a cookie stand, or it was going to be like a hot dog stand, and I'd have 4 or 5 kegs, and you'd see my smiling face, and I'd be hot, and I'd be pouring beer when you came up. And then when they showed me the hoop tent where we're at now, and it was huge, and I'm walking around it, and the foundation goes, so do you think you can put a beer tent here? I'm like, absolutely. And I had no idea what I was going to do with that space, right? No, none whatsoever, but we kind of figured out how to we rented some trucks and made the trucks. And now we own 3 trucks that we have actually designed ourselves and made specifically just for craft beer instead of just pushing like Bud or Bud Light or Coors and Coors Light. It's a whole different process on how you push those. And made it very craft beer oriented. So the breweries and our brewery here, obviously, but any brewer would be happy to have their beer served out of our truck because we use beer gas. It's also a little bit warmer. We actually put a wood floor in so you can slide the kegs so they don't get too rattled up when you move around, and that kind of stuff. So we kind of just design things around what we think, our customer is going to want. And so that's kind of been, and then I do, because of those things, and I think that's a little bit like what you guys do as you do research and you start to learn and kind of better yourself, people start to ask you for help, right? And for the longest time, I was on the board of the Restaurant Association, chaired it. I was on the downtown DCA, Downtown Community Alliance, which is the partnership. I was treasurer and secretary, just trying to help other small businesses and other economics. It kind of grew into a consulting gig, So now I do some work in Philadelphia, I do some work in Chicago with other restaurant groups, and lately it's been working with people that just need some more hospitality education. Because if you have a chiropractic or you're working with the VA, it's not hard to be hospitable, but a lot of people have a hard time knowing how to approach that. I think and one of the things I use for an example, at least around here, is if you ever go into a Casey's or a Come and Go, they do a nice job saying hello and goodbye. That's really all they really say to you, but it feels good, right? You're always like, oh, that's so nice. They recognize me on the way in, they recognize me on the way out, and so it's just trying to get, small businesses, medium-sized, even some big businesses. I worked with Hy-Vee too as well, just trying to get them to maybe see how hospitality can fit into their organization, and so that's been kind of a fun journey. Although I'm not a very good counselor, I decided, kind of through, because a lot of times you do a lot of research with somebody, or you do a lot of work, and they actually come up with some great ideas, but they can't implement them, right? So probably like when you have a counseling a family, you have some great ideas. They may even come up with some solutions, but they don't want to implement them. You meet them a week later, 2 months later, and they're still in the same spot, right? Because they just don't want to move forward on those things. So a lot of times when I do consulting, I'm not very good at I don't want to be there. I don't want to see them every week. I want to see them once and then be done, right? And that kind of stuff. So it's been a great journey. But I'm always amazed with people I've met that read and then people that educate themselves, and then there's entrepreneurs, and there's this I've been getting older, there's this somebody's going to have to come up with some way to meld entrepreneurship spirit with people that do kind of more of this kind of self-betterment, because I think entrepreneurs, at least for me, are way outright, and we very rarely think much about kind of how to get to a certain point. We just kind of go that direction, and if we're fairly fortunate or if we're lucky, we become successful. But a lot of times I think we work harder than we have to, and sometimes maybe we could work a little smarter if we actually slowed down and did some more work on ourselves, on kind of how to grow ourselves before we grow our business. A lot of times I'm running off a cliff, right? My wife is kind of grabbing me by the shirt tails before I go flying off the other side, right? And I've always said if I can figure out how to slow down and maybe figure out how to change the way I do business, maybe I could grow differently. I love what I do, don't get me wrong. I don't think I'd have life any different as far as in the end, but I would love to be maybe not so like running around. Like I love to kind of keep moving, but sometimes I said to my wife, I'm 48, I said, I got to figure out probably the next 10 or 12 years how to back off. Like how am I going to slow down? If I have 4 businesses now or 5, do I have 8 in 10 years, or do I somehow get down to 2 or down to none? Right, and that's the struggle I think with with people that have that entrepreneurship spirit, right? That don't know how to maybe capitalize and compartmentalize what they've done or where they've been, and carry it forward. So I don't know if you have any questions. I'm happy. And by the way, I can talk to you about anything: government. I can talk to you about licensing, economics. Anything about entrepreneurship. I mean, really anything. I'm also on the board of the other NRA, the National Restaurant Association. So. We're the second biggest private employer in the country, and so we spend a lot of time in DC. We spend a lot of time, in board meetings, trying to talk about our industry and how to shape it. And I'm probably one of the few smaller businesses on that board, and so my voice normally is about the small restaurant and the employee-employer relationship, because a lot of people on the board are, don't I shouldn't say don't see their employees, because that's not true, but they have big companies, right? So they're not touching maybe the staff on the ground as much. So I can bring some of that human aspect to kind of some of the struggles with minimum wage and insurance, and hopefully bring some balance, to that conversation, and then also talk on depreciation, how minimum wage can also hurt us, so on both sides, right? Kind of bounce, back and forth. So it's been quite the experience. I'm in my 6th year of my 6-year agreement, and I just been slotted to be treasurer, then vice chair, then chairman of the association. So if I get chosen, I got 3 more years. I'm not sure if my wife's happy about that or not, but we'll see.
Your favorite quote.
Change is the very most natural thing, and life is attitude and timing. J.J. Walker.
Say it one more time.
Change is the very most natural thing, and life is mostly attitude and timing. But J.J. Walker's a singer, not the J.J. Walker that's the comedian. So.